There we go. We are recording. Awesome. So with us on the panel are Mr. Chuck Johns from Northeast Texas Community College Board of Trustees. Welcome. Ms. Carol Scott from Del Mar College Board of Regents, chair there. And Jake Starkey, Alvin Community College Board of Regents. He drove up today just for this, so we feel privileged to have him here for that. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I was like, what is that's the one we're fixing to take off. That's bigger than the plane. All right, so I have some questions to ask you. First of all, what motivated you to originally serve as a trustee or regent, and how has your perspective changed through your tenure? So what got you motivated to get into this thing? And then how has that motivation continued through your tenure?
I've always had an interest in local governance. I've served, elected to Pittsburgh City Council at age 25, served 2 terms, I served 3 terms on our school board. In 1996, I was elected to our community college board, and our college was in turmoil at that time. They had some irregularities going on, the Texas Rangers were investigating, so it was not hard to win. Not the only way I won. But anyway, I've had a real interest in local governance all my life, even as a child, But, and how has it changed? When you get on the inside, there's just a lot of things happening that are not like you thought they were. But it's been, by and large, mostly 27 years have been very positive.
And you're still motivated.
Well, maybe not as much. Yeah. Obviously I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're so glad that you're on the CAT board.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, absolutely. Carol?
So I'm going to continue with the theme. I've been this way my whole life. I was, high school class officer, college organization president, sorority president. Moved to Corpus Christi after my husband and I got married, and immediately started getting involved in leadership, Corpus Christi and Chamber of Commerce and those kinds of things, and evolved to leadership in education through our local ISD school board, where I served for 2 terms, including 3 years as president of that board, and was stepping down from that board when my good friend at Del Mar College, who was chair of the board at the time, said, "Hey, there's an open slot, would you be interested?" And so ran for the Del Mar College slot, and am now in my 2nd term as a regent, and have just entered my 3rd term as chair of the board there. But I continue to do it because of the connection, and my philosophy on public ed and my philosophy on community college is very similar. If you want to transform communities, if you want to really change the way communities function and the economic future of communities, you do it through education. You do it through a strong public education system, whether that's rural, suburban, or urban areas, and you do it through strong higher education and post-secondary training as well. So I look to organizations where I think I can make a difference, and I have felt like Del Mar College is the place where my service is most needed and most productive right now. So it's really a thrill to serve.
Jake?
I lost a bet. Okay, I'm kidding. No, I attended our community college out of high school, and kind of my career path was working with municipal government, working with county government. So I've always been on the worker side, if you will, of governance. And then this opportunity presented itself. Ironically, I'm 3 years in. I signed up to run in 2020, and then it was like right when the deadline hit that no one was running against us, the world shut down with COVID. And so I've had a crash course in community college governance when there was nobody on campus. The first 6 months of being a regent, we met through Zoom. We didn't have that kind of communal experience of sitting on the actual board together, looking at each other face to face. So I guess my experience has been a little different than theirs as far as the start, but for me, it's just a passion for the community aspect, Alvin Community College is the community's college, and the ability to help govern that and help shepherd it forward is something that I'm passionate about. And I
Thank you.
did not lose a bet.
No, that's fine.
I see ACC up there, and I don't know if that's Austin Community College or Alvin Community College.
It's your colleagues at Alvin.
Yes, I did not.
So they're listening.
I'm gonna get called about that.
Well, I like that you use that word passion, because each of you has a passion for helping your communities. Well, otherwise you would not be doing this. It's a lot of work, and the eyes are on you, and you just have to stay focused on your mission and focused on what's most important, and that is students and the community. So awesome, great answers. Second, we're going to pull those 9 principles up. Yes, there we go. On the board, on the screen, we've got 9 principles of effective leadership that you can see there. We've discussed some of those this morning, and just wanted to have those up as I ask the second question. From the 9 principles of effective trusteeship, which do you find to be the most challenging, and what advice can you share about that? Anyone?
I'll jump in. So I think the number 3, setting policy direction for the college. It sounds easy, but it is so important, and it really, to me, is the bedrock of the board CEO relationship. Because if there's not clear policy, and by policy direction, it's both the foundational policies on how the college operates, but it's also the vision, mission, and objectives articulated through a strategic plan that tell the community and create the cohesiveness between the board and the CEO. And so that takes work, that takes alignment, that takes some negotiation, it takes being able to listen for contradictory as well as complementary areas of focus. There needs to be a real partnership with the CEO to make sure that as the educational leader, not just the administrative leader, but the educational leader at your school, your district, that the CEO and his staff are developing the college the way as professionals they think it should go, but you're representing the community and other constituencies, and so there needs to be that joint alignment to make sure that those areas that in which you move forward are important. So it sounds easy, but it really is a very time-consuming, I think, foundational piece of work. Following with that would be number 6, monitoring institutional performance. So when you talk about monitoring institutional performance, it's not a gotcha kind of monitoring. You're not policing. You're not turning over rocks looking for mistakes, because I can promise you, if you turn over rocks looking for mistakes, you're going to find them. This is a human organization. And so if that's your mentality on monitoring, then we might need to shift that and really think about the terminology we use at Del Mar College is key performance indicators. So related to that strategic plan, what are the key performance indicators so that the board clearly articulates and agrees upon what are the annual objectives moving forward within that strategic plan. That sets the long-term vision. You still have annual evaluations with your CEO, but that really sets that 5-year organizational structure. So those are, to me, the 2 most important things.
Just to add to what Carol said, number 6, if this bill passes, it's been created by the commission. Number 6 is becoming more and more important, because instead of funded by contact hours, you're going to be performance-based, and that's going to be really important.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Good.
I don't think it's the hardest one, but supporting and advocating for the interests of the institution, I think, is both outward and inward, in the sense that I know myself and a lot of the regents at ACC consider it very important to go and advocate to the community what ACC provides to the community, whether it's workforce training or just educational support for the school district with dual credit and other things like that, certificates, etc. So we consider it a priority to be out in the community to let people know what's going on. But also, it comes to us going inside and being involved in inside the college and letting staff and professors know that we exist and that it's not just the CEO running everything. Let them know that we're an active board, that we care. And there's a balance there because you don't want to do an in-run, you don't want the staff doing an in-run around the CEO where it's just them coming up to you going, oh, you'll never guess what happened. Well, there's a chain of command for a reason.
Sure.
There's a balance there, but your presence on campus with them at events, at luncheons, at convocation means something to them. And that's an important thing. So it's not necessarily a difficult thing, but it's an important thing.
I'm so glad you added that because that's, it's important to be on campus, but not to be that person out looking for things to, run because you're in governance. You're not there to try to find things to get anybody in trouble or you're not in management, you're not in administration, you're in governance. But that's great to be on campus, supporting what's going on. That kind of helps rally people around the strategic goals and the policy that Carol spoke to. So important. And Steve earlier was talking about that policy direction and so many different strategic plans and this, that, and the other thing. That's tough to navigate all of that together. Again, we talked about having maybe at least three broad objectives that you're going to accomplish that year, goals and objectives that you're going to accomplish that year. And it kind of grows over time and you understand I will tell you this, you have got to, as a board, I shouldn't be saying because I'm not on the panel, but you've got to have your objectives align with the CEO's objectives and come out and unify and support that all the way. Chuck, anything you want to add to that? Any of those points?
I think they've covered it well.
Okay, awesome. So question 3 is, in what ways does your board collaborate with administration to create a collective vision of the future? How do y'all do that?
I haven't just gone through the process of hiring a new CEO 2 Julys ago, and haven't hired people in not real life, in my real job, in the job that pays. How about that? It's an interesting thing to, in my opinion, I'm looking for someone that has their own vision of what a community college should do. And maybe it aligns with what I'm looking for, maybe it doesn't, but I'm looking for someone that has a vision and is not just looking to follow whatever I say, because I'm one of 9, right? And there's 9 people, and we are different in what we're expecting of the CEO. We all are heading in the same direction, thankfully, which I'm very happy about, but we all have different visions of how we get there. So for me, I'm looking for the CEO that has an opinion and has a vision of how he or she is gonna get there. So to me, how are you gonna get there versus, all right, where do you want me to go?
Yes.
No. Tell me how you're gonna get there, and we'll see if we're heading in the right direction. That's important to me.
It's awesome.
So I have a 2-pronged answer to that. At Del Mar, we have had a lot of appointments and new board members through election and appointment. Through COVID, we had a couple of board members who passed away. We had one who had to resign because of a severe health issue. And so part of what I have done at Del Mar as board chair was to make sure that when we're onboarding new board members, that we spend a significant amount of time talking about how the board operates, the college's strategic plan, the vision for the college, so that as folks are brought into the fold of the Board of Regents, there's, I hope, setting the stage about that collective work and about that collaborative work. And then through the strategic planning process, staff is very often brought to us their recommendations for vision and mission and purpose review and what that new alignment might look like. We're doing it a little bit differently this year, kicking off the strategic plan with the board's annual self-evaluation, because I've got so many new board members. I've got a pretty good balance, but I'm going to end up with 3 new board members this year. And so we're trying to create that alignment through that strategic planning conversation. And that keeps it in the college's process, but also I think keeps that conversation at the board level where it needs to be. Let's set that vision and direction, and then let the college's strategic plan development follow that.
I think it's good, I think Jake alluded to have some divergent views. More options you got, better chance you have. But I served on our school board for 9 years, and school board training was mandated. And there's one statement that stuck with me from all that. You are not a board member. You are a member of a board. Individually, you're nothing. Martha alluded to that.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. Thank you. That's very insightful points. I love that. How does your board, or how does the board support your CEO to identify a limited set of priorities for the next year?
Our board, I think at budget time, we look at the recommendations by the administration. And by and large, we support that, but not blindly.
Okay.
We go through it, and if there are maybe some things we think are misprioritized, we'll visit it as a board.
Mm-hmm.
There's in using that language, I think there's a little bit of a misnomer, because the reality is your CEO has 1,000 priorities based on law and federal law, state law, which, there's a lot of things that your CEO and staff are responsible for that, if ignored, would cause major issues for the college. And so I always recognize that in strategic planning and in annual evaluations of the CEO, there might be things that we're layering on top of that are big college initiatives, but never underestimating what it takes to run an organization that is that big and with that many moving pieces. So I appreciate that, but I always want to make sure that we understand that just because we name 2 or 3 priorities, that's not all that CEO is going to do that year. There's a whole lot of underlying work that has to go on. But we do that through that 5-year strategic plan, and then the annual objectives related to that, coupled within the budgeting process. Okay, if our QEP for SACS was around student advising, and so in that annual budget discussion, where are the expenditures that are going to accomplish our QEP in advising related to that SACS COC thing? It's also part of our strategic plan, but where does the annual budget then support that? So it all has to align, and we need to be tracking that and understanding that as much as our CEO is.
Absolutely.
I would say the interesting thing with this question for us is that with getting a new CEO, we had a couple things. One, coming out of COVID, getting a new CEO, and then our strategic plan ended as we were getting a new CEO. So we actually, hate to say it, we kind of punted for a year, because it would have been Dr. Albrecht writing a new strategic plan for the new CEO to implement. And so we went ahead and held off on it, so that way our new CEO would have it. So we're just now kind of getting into, we've created a new strategic plan, but as far as like helping implement it and helping kind of push through it, we're kind of just now getting into it. And so this is the first time I've done it, so ask me in a year.
I'm not sure this relates entirely to your question, but our college is perhaps the newest one in Texas. It was opened in 1984. Three counties voted to create the taxing district, but they set the tax rate at 10 cents. And the board does not have the authority to raise it. If you need more money from local taxes, other than valuations, you gotta have a vote. One time in the 40 years, almost 40 years, we were successful, and our rate is now 13 cents. This year, our valuations increased so much, if we did not lower the rate, we faced a rollback.
Wow.
So we had to lower our rate from
Yeah.
13 to 12 cents.
Yeah.
But that's,
So the property values.
property values were escalated, so.
Yeah. We did
But
similar.
I don't know if anybody has a tax rate that low, 13 cents.
A little lower.
Yeah.
We're at 10 cents.
So you've got one heck of a valuation. That's all.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah,
We
with
do.
all the abatements.
well, no, in some
Come
ways,
down
it makes
our
things a
problem.
little too easy, because
We
there's
have
some hard.
lost a steel mill,
Oh, wow.
2 coal-powered power plants, the corporate office of Pilgrim Pride,
Really?
in a period of 15 or 20 years, so. But, you know,
Yeah,
with property values going up and new construction, we're holding our own.
I mean, 67% of our budget is property tax.
Wow.
Tuition is 15%, state aid is 15%, so
Our property tax is about maybe 20%.
exactly, I mean, it's such an anomaly.
That's diversity, that diversity that you see across the state is one of the
I
reasons for the
suspect
challenges.
Austin may have one taxpayer who pays more than our entire district.
God.
Well, a lot of them are pretty good at dodging your taxes.
Yeah.
We collect, $3.5 million.
Wow.
Total.
Well, this next question, it involves students, which is what we're all about. In what ways does your board engage with students, and how does your institution develop the board's understanding of the contemporary college experience? How do you engage with students, and how do you get into that experience that they have?
I think we used to do a better job of it when we met. Our new boardroom is not on our main campus. It's in one of the auxiliary campuses. And we would, prior to that, we would be in the student union building. We would be seeing, campus clubs with their tables during registration. And so you had a chance to just get a sense and a feel. It wasn't a formal relationship, but we were at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, we were on campus. So that is a little bit different in our new board configuration. We hear from students not often. We have to seek opportunities to do that, and we probably don't do that enough as a board. I think that's one of the areas in our board self-evaluation that we've been talking about is where's that direct voice? How do we understand that voice of our students today? And I don't think we do a good enough job of it.
I think for us, we have done we get a report monthly in our board meeting from the staff governance, the
Student government.
student government, but then also staff government.
Okay.
And they try to feed into us about what's going on with students, but also the student government will come and talk to us. That being said, I agree. I don't think we do a good enough job at it because also, let's be honest, the student government are the high achievers. They're the ones aiming higher, right? Like
Future the Carol Scotts.
The ones that I'd be curious about are the ones that honestly don't have the time, right? They're the moms and dads working 2 jobs and coming to school, and they don't have the time to talk to us. But I don't know how to get that data, figure out how to make their life a little bit easier. But that's the people that I want to help. I want to help the juniors and seniors get dual credit, and we get data from them, but it's more that they're passing, right? But how do we help the ones that are trying to do better for their families? If they're not gonna graduate from high school and go off to college, maybe never come back. They're, how do we get the data from the ones that are living in Alvin or living in our area and are not going to get a certificate we go?
We have probably half of our meetings a year, we have students address the board. And then we'll have field trips 2 or 3 times a year. We had students here yesterday for community college day.
That was awesome.
Yeah, we have that.
I love that. That was awesome. A great way to get them involved and understand their experience. You sit with those students for any length of time, you're going to find out their experience is different than it used to be. So great responses. I love that. Question 6 is how can trustees identify and avoid micromanaging or getting into the weeds of day-to-day operations of the college? How do you do that?
To be simplistic, you got two responsibilities, establish policy and hire the CEO.
Stick with that.
That's it.
The way I've described it is, our job is to provide the bumper lanes, you know, and sometimes it narrows and sometimes it widens depending on the issue. But that's it. Like, you know, sometimes they'll ask us questions and we have to get in, the CEO will ask us questions, we have to get into the weeds a little bit because he's asking for advice and counsel. But I mean, it kind of drives me crazy that we approve hires and fires and, you know, or resignations and things like that. You know, we have that on our agenda.
That is, yeah.
You know, it's perfunctory.
Yeah, it
is the right
is.
term.
Absolutely.
But still, like, I feel that the dean of a department knows whether or not they're hiring the right person much better than me, who has no idea what it takes to teach biology. I have no idea, so that's.
Yeah, we've never had singled anyone out and said, I don't know about John Smith there.
Exactly.
I mean, you just don't do that.
People ask me, are you still on the college board? And I said, well, it depends. What do you want?
What do you want? I like bumper lane because we don't want to throw the gutter balls.
I have to know them pretty well before I respond.
Jay, we have a comment
Oh.
from online. One of our members of the education committee was Susan Clint Kingsbury from the Alamo Colleges District.
Hello, Clint. What is that?
He says that trustees cover the what in terms of what needs to be done. The CEO covers the how that should be accomplished.
Well said, Clint. Good job. Like that. That's true.
I think what happens, relating to micromanaging, it happens when we hear complaints.
Yeah.
It rarely happens when we have compliments. Those are easy to pass forward. But when somebody stops you in the grocery store or at church or at the soccer field or wherever it may be, or a vendor who didn't get a contract calls and says, you know, I want to complain about XYZ, you really have to go through some case studies with folks who've never been on a governing board before to understand how to respond in the moment, as well as then how to refer that to your CEO. And I think that we probably need to do more of that. We've got policy around student grievances and other kinds of things, but we have to help trustees in the moment understand how to respond and how to listen as an elected official without trying to solve the problem yourself. And then to ask the right question, make the referral and ask the right question, or have a policy of the board. How is the board informed once a complaint is made that we know it's been resolved? That's a potentially a policy or procedural question to have that conversation with your CEO, because you don't want to be left hanging. But that's going to happen through conversation and through understanding that you can't promise, you can't fix it yourself. You have to respond within the policies that the board has set. But to me, that's the hardest, is when somebody stops you in the moment and has a complaint about something. I made the mistake of answering a phone call. You know, and it was a mom of a 20-year-old student who was upset about something that had happened in the classroom. And I said, one, I'm a Regent trustee, I can't get involved directly, but there is a student grievance process, and I will look it up and I will text it to you. But I said, but on the second part, you can't do this on behalf of your student. Your student is an adult, they have to handle this grievance process themselves. You can go with them. I'm not saying they have to handle it alone, but you can't handle it on behalf of your daughter. Your daughter has to handle this herself. And so I found the grievance process on my phone, on the website, because I was traveling at the time. My husband was driving. We were traveling at the time, and I texted the grievance process to her, and then I let the CEO know so he could pass it on to student services. But you get caught in that moment, and you don't want to say, "Oop, I can't talk to you." Hang on, you can't do that. You have to figure out a way to respond.
But you said something very important. You let the CEO know.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
you not let them know, that would have been a major
Absolutely.
drawback. Big problem.
I had a great email yesterday from a client saying, "Hey, aren't you involved in Del Mar?" I need to know how to get a hold about some, contract training, some continuing education and potential contract training. Absolutely. And I copied Mark on the reply and said, you might want to talk to the dean and the continuing education, blah, 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 but copied Mark on that reply, so he would follow it.
One of the things that, as a business owner, but I think kind of reflects for us as well, potentially, again, there's always that asterisk, but if it's something good, you pass along the compliment, right? So if it's something good, what I've noticed as our president, it's someone else did great. If it's something good, it was Stacy, it was Wendy, it was someone else, they did a great job. If it's a problem, I'm sorry about that. He takes responsibility, and I think that that's the mark of a great leader.
That is.
It's not, well, they really screwed up. Yeah, they did.
It could be true, but you don't say it.
Right, exactly. It doesn't matter what it is. And we do that in our business.
True.
Ultimately, it's me. If it's
Yeah.
a screw up, it's me. But if it's a well done, and yep, that was all them. And I think that that's something that we can learn from too. It's all the college, it's the staff, it's the teachers, it's the whatever it may be. And I think that's a good way to build up.
Yeah, and that's micromanaging and falling into that is such an easy mistake for new trustees, because we come from backgrounds ourselves of being the one in control, perhaps, in our day jobs, and that's something you've got to work on. So, great responses. The next question is, under the standards of ethical conduct, the handbook states that board members work with other board members in a spirit of harmony and cooperation, regardless of differences of opinion that will arise during debates of points at issue. Would you share your perspectives on trustees' conduct and conflict resolution? Have you ever had that experience? How did you resolve that? What would you tell us?
I think it's rare at my board that it's not a unanimous vote. But I tell them that it's okay to vote against.
Sure.
But you leave your disagreements in the boardroom.
We have good questions. We have healthy discussion on not every issue, but on really important issues. But we almost always have unanimous votes. Yeah. So I think that is healthy. We have had occasions, we've had a number of occasions over the 8 years that I've served on the board. We actually had a board member that we had to censure multiple times. And that was the strongest. We would actually launch an investigation, hire a third-party individual to investigate what that board member had done outside of the boardroom. And 2 different times, and we were on our 3rd investigation when he resigned, we had to publicly censure that board member because he would make statements. He would publish op-ed pieces in small neighborhood newspapers, not the major newspaper. He would pass out flyers about his vision for the college and what we ought to be doing that were in direct contrast to things that the board had voted on. And so because we had this documentation of not only what he was saying, but what he was doing out in the community, and we tried multiple times to correct that behavior and finally had to reach the point of censure because that behavior wouldn't stop. And that was really the most we could do. But we had a process that we went through to do that, and it wasn't at spur of the moment. And so it was actually difficult. To a little bit lesser extent, as board chair, I had a board member who, while we have the strategic planning KPIs, during the CEO's performance evaluation, would want to bring in his own perspective of what data he thought was important and rate the CEO based on that. And so we had some conversations around, he and I did, around the appropriateness of evaluating someone against standards that the board had not agreed upon, and tried to buffet that behavior as best I could as board chair, but that was difficult.
That's a great example of what not to do as a board member. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Absolutely.
How did you, as a board member, individually handle comments given to you when you were going through that process of censorship?
I was not board chair, during the 2 censorship votes. I think I was on the 3rd investigation. I'd have to go back and look at the timing. There were community conversations around what was happening, and I would reply that the board is investigating. And most of that was done in closed session, some of that was done in open session. Ultimately, we had to take the vote to censure in open session. And we did that by the drafting and public reading of a resolution of censorship. And so I would respond with anything that had been done in public session in terms of explanation or process, but that resolution of censorship was a public document.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but anything in private, in closed session, I couldn't, but that's as board chair, that's what our board chair at the time did, and then I think the 3rd one I was anyway, that's the process we went by.
Wow.
I would just say that you want to consult your attorney at all times.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I was
Yeah.
not done without legal counsel.
Yeah.
That is correct. That is correct.
Jake?
The thing I love about our board is that we have such varying backgrounds in the sense that I understand how important data is, but I come from a marketing and a different background than a lot of our board members who understand how to interpret the data. And so I love that I can sit next to someone on the actual board and turn to them and go, what does this data mean? Because that's what he does for a living. He interprets data for a living. And so he loves the data. And so I understand that data is important. And so, but I say that to say this, when there's disagreements, at the end of the day, we do realize we're one of 9. And one of the best things that happened to me was when I got on the board, the president gave me a book that I recommend all the time and can never remember the name of it for the life of me. But it's a book about the importance of governance as a total board and the idea that we can disagree, we can take a vote. There is an important part of being a dissenting opinion. But at the end of the day, if it passes, it passes. And if it fails, it fails. And when we walk out, I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong if I voted against it, but it has to say, I voted against it. However, it did pass, and Alvin Community College is going to move forward with this because it's not an untruth. It's not an incorrect statement. I'm not saying anything improper, but at the end of the day, it did pass, and we're moving forward. I don't need to get into the details of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with stating that.
Just the facts.
Just the facts, but I don't need to get into, I voted against it, it was dumb. Anybody any good, there's a way to say things, without kind of picking at people
And sometimes you worry about boards that never have any dissent or any healthy discussion.
Yeah.
You're wondering, well, how that doesn't happen. It's just not normal.
And one thing that our board is really good at, our chairperson, Belle, is really good at enforcing the fact that we don't like wasting time in meetings. But what she'll do is, like, if you have a question, email Dr. Exley, get your answer. That doesn't mean that we're not going to ask it in the meeting, because sometimes we feel that it's important that it's stated in public
Absolutely.
for everyone to hear the answer. But sometimes it's a nuanced answer, and I want to know, but we get the answer before, so that way I'm satisfied that I understand what's going on, and I don't follow up with 20 questions and kind of drag it out for an hour. But yeah, I'm still going to ask you a question. I think that helps, so that I'm satisfied with my questions and concerns, but I'm still going to ask the question in public. Dr. Exley will answer the question, and we can go on. And so there is still that, we're not just a rubber stamp committee.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Well, we're down to our final question. I can't believe it. I'm looking at the time and going, this has been great discussion. So thinking back to when you were a new board member, some will think farther back than others, and some will think back just a short amount of time. But thinking back to that time, what is one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were first on the board?
As I said earlier, I serve on the city council and school board. in this one, but that first one was 50 years ago. And the way the boards operated the same on all three levels. And I'm thinking, after 20-something years going on the college board, I've already been addressed those problems, but, the importance of executive session and confidentiality. When you disagree, you don't get outside that boardroom. That's it for me.
Okay, good.
I don't know that it's so much advice, but I wish I would have known a little bit more about the evolution of how higher education came to be not only in the US, but in Texas, and specifically how community colleges evolved. So I think there's a body of knowledge there that some of our faculty and very definitely some of our presidents and administrators learn in their education that I think is helpful to set a context for why state governance, state laws are written the way they are, why the institution or the industry of community colleges are organized the way they are in the state of Texas and throughout the US. And I didn't have a full appreciation for that evolution. So I've recently been listening to some podcasts and been doing some reading that kind of illuminates for me, oh, that's why that's done that way. And even if you've been in other areas of governance, it is completely different than the evolution of business but when you realize industrial age practices versus where we are today. So I think that's helpful for me to understand the context and the evolution of that. The other thing that I wish we had more discussion on is how to ask the right questions as a board member. Because it's asking a question, how do we do that? Or what's the policy or procedure around that? Versus why did you do that? Or making a comment about an agenda item or a report or something, and not understanding to potentially frame your question within, again, board adopted policy, budget priorities, strategic plan, those kinds of things. So how do you ask questions that are going to not get into the details of when a student registers and what they do here and what they do there, but what are the obstacles? What are the most common obstacles that our students are experiencing in the registration process? And do we have the budget and the training and the resources for our people to try to overcome those obstacles on behalf of our students? So how do you elevate your questions at the board table to get to those kinds of systemic discussions versus some of the more mundane things?
Awesome. MJ?
Three quick things. One, you mentioned confidentiality. I've been outside of executive session where someone who works for our community college has come up and said something to me that was only spoken about in executive session.
Ooh.
And you want to talk about not knowing how to respond, whether to be scared or infuriated. Two, maybe it's not everywhere, but to me, community colleges get short shrift in that you have to have streets, so that's local government. You have to have school districts, so you have to have public education.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think people forget that community colleges offer a viable resource to the community. And so when you talk about taxes and things like that, and then when it comes to dealing with your CEO, don't forget that you're a starter pistol, in the sense that I know that I would email our former president and say, I was thinking about this. Do not respond. Do not worry about this. It is Friday night at 10 p.m. I don't need an answer anytime soon, i.e. this weekend. I don't need an answer this week. I was just curious about XYZ. At 1 a.m. I'd get an email from him. So just know that the CEOs want to do the best job, and while they might see that and see, oh, I don't have to respond, they're gonna feel compelled to respond, and they have to have a life as well. And so if it can wait, like that email really could have waited. I could have typed it up and just left it as a draft or whatever, but I went ahead and sent it, and all I did was terrorize her and I didn't mean to. I mean, I really did. I got an email on a Friday night at 1 a.m. I didn't need a response that quick. I could have waited till Monday to send it. So just know that they're humans as well.
I just had a thought, so on Google Mail, Gmail that we have, it's got a thing where you can send it later.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That would, I'm thinking about doing that, because it's on my mind right now.
Yeah.
And like you said, I don't want an answer right now, so you can send that Monday at
Yep.
8:45 or whatever like that.
Aren't there criminal penalties for violation of the meetings act?
Yes.
Yeah.
It can lead to potential litigation.
Yeah.
Of the board and the individual in the college.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, Chuck, Carol, Jake, thank y'all so much. We've had a really great discussion. Let's give them a round of applause. Oh, do we have any? Oh, do we have any audience questions? I don't know, do we?
All right.
I want to thank you all for being here today. I am driving back to Corpus this afternoon, so I'm not going to stick around for the afternoon sessions, but thank you all for being here.
Oh.
And I gotta go home,
I echo that, I've got a 5-hour drive, so after lunch, I'm leaving.
All right.
Great to see you.
Well, thank y'all so much for being on this panel. The rest of us are going to be back at 12:30. We do have a question on the board